Hi everyone and welcome to Crash Test Airsoft. What we're going to do today is build an L119A1 assault rifle from a Tokyo Marui M4A1 Socom and all of these extra bits. The L119A1 is the British designation for the Canadian-made Colt Canada C8 SFW and the C8 CQB assault rifle. The Canadians wanted to iron out a few of the faults with the original M4 platform, and they tasked a small arms manufacturer in Quebec called Diemaco with this task. The main thing they wanted was a barrel which could withstand the heat of being used as a kind of longer range support weapon. So what they did is they requested a cold hammer forged barrel, which Colt USA were unable to provide at the time in large quantities. The gun that they made, the C7, was so successful that it was actually bought by multiple nations, including Denmark, Holland, Britain, and various others. And eventually, this kind of narked Colt quite a lot, and they bought Diemaco out, and it became Colt Canada in 2005. So the L119A1 is just the British designation of the C8 SFW and the CQB. The SFW features a 15.7 inch barrel, and it comes with a reinforced front sight and a slightly different mounting option for the underslung M203 grenade launcher. The CQB features a 10-inch barrel, and you've actually got to remove the bayonet lug from the bottom of the sight to get the surefire suppressor on. So making this out of airsoft is a fair undertaking because you've got a few bits of modification to do, and what we're going to do is go through all the parts that you'll need to build the gun into a Tokyo Marui recoil, yeah, we'll start the build from now. Okay, the first thing we're going to need to make an L119 is a lower receiver with the correct trademarks on it. Luckily for the Tokyo Marui recoil series, Leilac F Factory make blank lower receivers. They're not the cheapest things in the world, but they're very, very high quality, and they're completely blank. So what I did is had this one sent away, and basically a chap laser engraved the Diemaco logo on there with the L119A1 designation and a serial number of my choice. That's arbitrary, it doesn't really matter too much. Also up here, obviously, you've got the Made in Canada under license from Colt Manufacturing Company Incorporated, and that's all there is to it, really. I've had this cerakoted as well, because obviously when the laser etching takes place, it damages the surface a little bit. This is the original Diemaco logo. Now obviously Diemaco were bought out in 2005 by Colt, and I believe that all of them from now have the almost standard Colt logo, but it's got a little maple leaf in the top right hand corner there, but this is obviously a pre-2005 version. You can do whatever you like, there's no rules or anything to the L119, and more as I delve into the murky world of the C8, there's so many different setups and things like that you kind of can't go too far wrong. There's obviously the two key issues, which is obviously non-Colt USA markings on the receiver and the correct barrel length, which we'll look at later. So once you've got yourself one of these, you can do it in two ways. You can buy the blank Leilac receiver, which I've done, and have it engraved, or you can actually, there are people who will fill and re-engrave the standard Tokyo Marui one for you, but I wanted something kind of, you know, that was completely original from the start. I also believe that if you're going to cerakote, you've got to shot blast the substrate first, and if you do that, you can often blast the filler out, so you know, it's much easier to go with the blank one. So this is the first part we will need. Okay, the second thing we're going to need is a barrel, and this is a really key point. If the barrel's the wrong length, all you've got is an M4 with different trademarks on it. The C8 SFW and the C8 CQB were based on a 15.7 inch barrel and a 10 inch barrel. Now the M4 CQB comes with a 10.5 inch barrel, so what you're going to have to do is either buy a different one, which I have, or take the standard Socom barrel, and you're going to have the barrel chopped off, and you're going to have to get them to lathe in a 14 mil by 1 mil left hand thread if you're using a left hand suppressor, And then what that will do is that will sit the flash hider really up close to the front sight. Now also on the standard M4 front sight you have a bayonet lug on the underside. Now the flash hider will hit that if you don't chop it off. So again, that's something that we will show you later in the video. The reason why I've chosen this barrel is, as you can see here, there's a cutout. Now, because we're going to be using a Generation 2 or 3 M4 retractable stock, this is going to be a front wired recoil shock. It's not going to use the rear wire with the crane stock, because the original C8s didn't come with a crane stock. It wasn't even developed then. So we're going to keep it as original as possible. So obviously you're going to need to try and find a way to get a small battery in, and you're going to need this cutout on the barrel to do it. So this is again a Laylax F Factory 10.5 inch barrel, which I've had chopped down. So that's the next thing we're going to need to make a realistic L119. Okay, the next thing you're going to need is a Generation 2 or 3 Colt retractable stock. The original C8 wasn't fitted with the Generation 4 waffled stock, which you'll find on the M4A1. It was fitted with the stock that would have gone on the Colt XM177 and the CAR-15 AR-15 platform. These are really easy to find. I've gone with the GMP one just because their plastic finishing is very, very good, and that will go on the standard Tokyo Marui recoil stock tube. So you're going to need one of these as well. Ideally, if you can, try and get one with the ridges on here. It is something that's a little bit up for debate. Some people have seen L119s with a crane stock on them, but I've yet to see a confirmed photo of one, whereas I've seen lots with these on, so I'm going to go with this for my build. Okay, what we're also going to need is a Knights Armament M4 RAS, or Rail Adapter System. The original C7 was fitted with the standard plastic M4A1 front handguard, which obviously comes with the Tokyo Marui Socom, but we're not building a C7, we're building a C8 based L119, and as I say, they were fitted with the Knights Armament standard RAS. I've seen pretty much every single incarnation of these, and I consider GMP to be the most accurate to the original Knights Armament, which I've also seen. The finish on most of the others is not quite correct, and the build quality is pretty poor on some of them. The only one, in my opinion, that comes close to the GMP is the Inakatsu, but they're ferociously expensive and near enough impossible to find, whereas these you can pick up now on eHobby Asia for $65 now, so best to go with this one. This kit comes with the Knights Armament front handguard, and it comes with the rail covers as well, so it's everything you need in there to do a decent job. Okay, the original C7 was actually fitted with the M16A2 grip, but by the time they'd moved on to the C8, A1 and A2, and obviously the SFW and the CQB, which they sort of gave to us, they were using a slightly different grip. Now, I don't know the name of the real steel grip, but I know that the GMP Storm grip is the closest thing to it. Another chap based in Korea called Warlord Tactical also makes an excellent version of this grip, and to be honest, if you're building an L119, it's probably best to approach him on Facebook and say that you need everything you need to build an A119. He can do you the front sight, he can do you the grip, he can do you the winged mount, RMR mount for the ACOG scope, and he can do you the butt pad as well, which we'll go on to next. So perhaps, put an order in with him, and then you'll be able to spread the postage cost for all the bits. Again, I went with the GMP one because I'd ordered lots of other GMP parts as well. I do have one of his butt pads coming in the post, so hopefully that'll be with me soon. But in the meantime, I'm going to be using a Garda version. Okay, as luck would have it, my Warlord Tactical butt pad has actually turned up while I've been compiling this video. So this is the Garda one that I was going to install, and I don't know if you can see here, it's got a kind of quite an aggressive, sharp pattern on the back, which goes edge to edge. This is the replica of the real one, and as you can see, it kind of curves round in each of the edges, and one of the chaps on our forum has actually posted a picture of the real one of these and one of the Warlord tactical ones, and there's barely anything in it. And then a nice little feature on the L119 is most of the photos taken of the real one have shown a zip tie going around the butt pad through the sling loop on the stock, presumably in kind of, you know, heavy duty use. These have been known to pop off, so you know, the soldiers themselves stick a zip tie on to hold them on. So there we go. Okay, last but not least, you're going to need a suppressor which would have been supplied to the Ministry of Defence for this gun. Now, the original one was the Surefire FA556-212, which has obviously now been superseded by the Socom series. They do an RC and an RC2 and an RC Mini. This is the RC version. I have seen reliable source photos of a genuine L119A1 with this suppressor on it, even though this is kind of the newer one. But most of the ones you will see is the FA556MG and the FA556-212 version, both just different lengths. They are really hard to come by now since Mad Bull have stopped making them. They discontinued them. The new Prol BOA suppressor is close, but the detailing around the knuckle here is not quite right. And then obviously there's the Permite version, which you may be able to get hold of still if you contact him directly, or if anyone's got one around second hand. So what I've done is taken the Angry Gun Socom suppressor. I had it blasted back because it was originally Dark Earth. They were out of stock of the black one. And again, what I've had is the original trades laser engraved onto the suppressor. I had the rear knuckle re-anodized from Dark Earth to black, and obviously then I've painted the whole lot in a kind of satin black colour. So that will give me a fairly realistic suppressor. This is a full working kind of twist version, so you untwist and the whole lot drops off the Surefire kind of replica flash hider there, which is correct for the L119 also. So now you've got all these bits, you can then start to kind of collect the bits you're going to need from the original Tokyo Marui, and you can start to build it up, and we're going to do that now. Okay, the last bit of modification you're going to need to do to one of the original parts is to the front sight. Now, as you can see, the bayonet lug is missing, so it's been ground off, and then I've had the whole sight cerakoted in a nice grey colour. So that means that the flash hider is going to be able to butt right up to the end of the barrel here, and it's not going to be hit by the protruding bayonet lug on the bottom. Now, that is an original modification, so the real steel version has had that removed. Now, whether they had a recasting original front sight or whether they did the modification ad hoc, I'm not sure. Someone might be able to shed light on that. This is the Tokyo Marui version of this sight. Again, it's the one I'm most happy with. What I've actually done is removed the seam along here and along the top, so we're just left with the thick seam, and that's given it a really, really high quality finish with the Cerakote on there. And I quite like it in the slightly lighter grey, which again, confirmed photos show that it was a different colour. So once you've got that bit, we can then move on to the build. So once you have all the extra bits that you need to turn the M4A1 into an L119, I recommend you strip the M4A1 Socom into bare parts completely, and then that will enable you to build it up from scratch with all the right parts. So the first thing to start with is the lower receiver and installing the fire selector switch. So what we're going to do is install that, and then we can move on stage by stage. Be careful with this fire selector switch because it's got the world's smallest little detent there with a spring behind it, and that will go flying. Tokyo Marui parts are really hard to come by in this country, so if you lose that, you're going to have to spend, you know, like £10 on a whole new fire selector lever with all the associated parts. So on this, you can possibly see here there is a flat, and then on the back of this securing plate, there is a flat also. Now, this is the actual part that does the selecting. This will push against the plate on the gearbox and move it over, whether you want safe, semi or auto. So you simply push what I do is turn this upside down so that you don't lose that detent. Put it in the semi position, and then from the back side install this plate, quite fiddly. Like so. And once you've got that in, you can then take the small screw, pop it on your screwdriver, again turn this upside down, and from the inside through the hole you can screw that on nice and snug like this. And now you have a working selector. Now what they've done, this isn't an ambidextrous selector on here, so Socom Marui have created a kind of false blanking plug which has actually got a notch, which I assume on the real steel would actually show you where the fire selector is from the other side. Once you've got that on, there's a tiny little bit of tape that secures that so that it doesn't fall out when you're putting the gearbox into the gun, and that's what we're going to do next. Okay, once the fire selector is installed in the receiver, we're going to need to go ahead and put the gearbox in the receiver. You're also going to need the fire reset, and you need to kind of do them at the same time. So what you want to do is slide your select plate over to full auto, which is far over to the left as we're looking at it, far over to the right, sorry, as we're looking at it. And likewise on the receiver, you want to select full auto on there. What you need to do is simply just place the wires through the bottom, and then what I tend to do is just bend the spring over, and then get the trigger through. Now once you're in that position, you should be able to get the back of the gearbox in, and then you can pull it up at the front, and while it's up here you can put the selector reset in the correct groove and then slide it down into the gearbox like so. Okay, so that's now in kind of the correct position, and you can see the fire selector is actually working already. So the next thing we need to do is install the pin through the middle to keep the gearbox centrally located in the lower receiver. To do that, I'm going to use another Laylax upgrade part. This is actually a screwed pin, so instead of a press pin which the original came with, once you've undone sort of 2 to 3 times, it's pretty much useless. It doesn't hold in. So this one actually has a securing screw on the end here, and you can unscrew it, press the pin through the gearbox, and then do the screw up with a bit of Loctite on there. So that's what we'll do. Okay, next. When our gearbox is in and our pin is secure, we can install the mag release. So simply long shaft pin there, goes through the hole, hold your finger up against it and turn it over. Once you're in that position, you just take the spring, slide it over the pin, and then you can get the other end and the screw all on your screwdriver. Press it up against like so, line it up, give it a couple of turns, and then it will thread on. And you can screw that down until it stops, just like so. Give it a test. Yeah, it's working fine. Okay, with the fire selector, mag release and gearbox installed in the lower receiver, we can now go ahead and install the grip. The grip's fairly standard. It's got all the holes in the top to put your wires and your screws through. The only thing I've had to do with the GMP is use a bit of sandpaper and lightly go over the inside, because the motor was a little bit stiff on the inside there. I haven't used Warlord Tacticals, but I'm guessing a bit more time and effort than GMP have got. He's made sure that it's smooth in. Obviously the motor, as you all know, the motor needs to be able to move completely freely. Otherwise, when you screw it down, it's going to tighten against the gearbox, it's going to seize and blow the fuse. So we can just take these wires, red wire through the front, black wire through the back, just there, and then as you bring the grip up to the end, just make a note of where the threads are on here, so I can see on my gearbox that the thread is on the front left and the rear right. So take the grip home, that should be a nice snug fit, and then I've done away with the Phillips screws that came with the original TM, and I've now got a proper hex screw on there, stainless steel actually, these ones. So it's a 2mm bit. Tip the gun up on its end. It also stays on the screwdriver rather than the Phillips ones, which fall off. So you can go all the way through there. through the hole. Just nip it up a little bit. Like all these things, if you've got multiple screws holding on one item, do it a little bit at a time on each one. So we can now put this one on. So bottom left, front right. And these want to be pretty firm, but don't round them off. Okay. You don't want to go stripping things, especially a gearbox shell, because then you're really in a bad way. Get it nice and snug. Make sure there's no play. Okay, now that's on. We can leave the motor off for the time being. That can go in at the end when we look at all the wiring. But that's now snug. If we turn the gun upside down, we can see that the spacing around the gearbox is nice and even. That means when we screw the recoil shock tube on, it doesn't jam against one of these edges, which it can do if you install it first. So that's what we're going to install next. Okay, our grip is on. The next thing is to install the stock tube. Now obviously on the Tokyo Marui recoil series, that's where the recoil weight is. So you can't install the batteries in the stock tubes on these, which can be problematic for front wired guns, especially when you're trying to put a battery elsewhere. So this is the first slightly inaccuracy with my build. What I'm going to be using is an ambidextrous sling plate at the back. Now, as you can see, this one features a ring which kind of curves around. Now, I don't believe anything like this has ever been fitted to an L119. What they use is an ambidextrous plate, but it's just simply got the eyelets for a sling. Sort of on each side. It doesn't have the bar across. But I like these. They look sturdy and they kind of look the part, really. So obviously the first thing we need to install is the rear securing ring. Again, this is a hard steel Laylax version. No major benefit. It just means you can do it up a bit tighter than the stock TM one. So obviously you need to put this on first, and you need to thread it all the way on. Now, as you can see, the stock tube on mine, I haven't ground it down. All I've done is removed the poor quality casting, because what was happening is the flats on here were jamming on the sides, so it didn't go on nice and smoothly, whereas it does now. So take those all the way onto the mil-spec sized bit of tube so they spin freely. Get a nice amount of silicone grease on the tube there, and likewise, this is the recoil guide. Okay, cake it in silicone, it's not a problem. Slide that over there, okay, and then you can pick up your gun, slide that on. It'll give you a little bit of tension at the beginning, obviously, as the spring meets the tube. Get it lined up on the thread and screw in. Now, you have to make sure, by giving a little squeeze here, you have to make sure that the gearbox and the tube line up so that the tube actually screws on the full way. And then when it's on, so obviously that's gone too far, so I need to wind it back to there. Okay, line up the groove there, and then I can slide my rear plate on and then do up the rear. Okay, and then we can nip that up with our Laylax tool afterwards. Okay, so the lower receiver is pretty much complete now. Obviously we need to put the stock on, but we can do that later. This is the only issue I have with the design of the TM recoil, is where this stock tube meets the gearbox and the receiver. It will actually spin on further than you want it to. And what happens is that causes a problem, because the inside of the stock tube there will actually prevent the upper receiver from clicking home. So what you actually have to do is wind this until as far as it will go, but then actually reverse it until, you know, the first time it's in line, then nip it up from there, and then you'll find the receiver clicks on nicely as it should. So what we're going to do next is we're going to put this aside, and we're going to assemble the upper receiver, because This is very tricky. I'm not going to do it on video because I'll be here all day. But what we have to do is we have to route the wires through the back of the hop assembly and then kind of clip the whole thing on in one go. When these wires go to the back, it's really easy. You can put the receiver on, then install the barrel nut, do it all in one sequence. In this, we have to kind of put the entire receiver and the recoil system here and the charging handle. We have to put it all on in one go, which can be kind of a bit fiddly. I'll show you, and then I'll do it off video so that, as I say, this video doesn't run too long. So I'll get together all the bits and show you what we need next. Right, with our lower complete, what we're going to do now is we're going to completely assemble the upper receiver. The reason we're going to do this is because I'm installing a much longer inner barrel than the outer barrel. The reason why we have to assemble this now is because we can't install everything on the lower, because I won't be able to do up the grub screw that secures the front sight to the barrel, because the grub screw will, or my screwdriver at least, will go straight into the inner barrel. It won't contact the grub screw, which is on the opposite side of the barrel. So what we need to do is assemble this first. It's not a major problem, but it's just the way around we've got to do it for my install. So another downside of the TM system is the barrel nut and delta ring system is proprietary. It's not like a real delta ring is. I'll be doing an install with genuine real steel parts at a later date. But what we're going to do first is install this as you've got your Socom in bits that we discussed earlier. The barrels are proprietary as well. This system here at the back will not fit a standard version 2 AEG, so no point trying. So all you have to do is simply pop this in here. It's keyed, so it's a D shape, so you kind of can't get it wrong. And put that in there, and then we're going to put this horseshoe clip in the groove. Okay, this is an upgraded part. It's hardened steel. It's Laylac F factory, and it just means you can do the barrel nut up a bit tighter. So you're going to slide that through there, leaving the gap for our front wired system. You're going to slide the barrel nut over the barrel, just like any other system. Now I'm just going to nip this because this is all going to be coming apart again, because this is not how I run my setup normally. So I'm going to nip that there so it's symmetrical. And now what I'm going to install is I'm going to install this grub screw that holds the front sight on. So we literally go through the hole in the bottom and we thread it onto the barrel. Now this will pop completely out the top, okay, but we are going to withdraw it back so that it's flush with the barrel. Okay, so we can slide the sight on. What we're then going to do is we're going to take this, as I say, this proprietary delta ring system. This has come off your Socom, which you've disassembled, so it goes on in exactly the same way. So barrel nut, then spring, then delta ring, then the kind of spider nut. Now normally on a real steel system, this spider is integrated into the barrel nut, but Tokyo Marui have done a slightly different system. Why, I don't know. Again, someone might be able to give me the reason, but I would say it's to do with making it compatible with a front wired gun. Obviously a real firearm doesn't have any wires going to the front handguard, whereas these do. So that's possibly why they've put this system on. So we just put a little screw in there and that holds that secure. So that's now kind of installed there. What we can now do is pop the front handguard cup onto the sight, and we can thread the sight over the barrel. Now what we've got to do is just line up the gas tube there with the hole on the spider and push that home. Okay, and that's in position, ready to go. I'm not going to press these pins fully home, these pins that go through the standard kind of Car 15 M4 front sight, because again I'm going to be taking this off again, but I'll put them in to show you. So the front one can go in because we are our grub screws at the back, so that can go in position, and then we can kind of align it by eye like so, and make sure that is bang on. pretty good. Okay, so what I can then do is take my Allen key and I can put it through the hole, through the barrel, and now what that's going to do is it's going to press on this upper surface of the sight here, and then I can go ahead and put the second pin through, if I can get it aligned. Okay, so that is aligned, so we may have to give this one a bit of persuasion. Okay, that's as far as I'm going to take that at the moment because I don't need to take it any further. And there we are. That's our upper receiver pretty much in place and ready to go. We can tighten the barrel nut now as well. That's another good thing about this Marui system. So I can pull the delta ring back and I can get the Lalax tool, which is shaped like this, as opposed to a kind of, you know, a standard barrel nut, which is like that. So we can take this one and we can actually hook it in, and we can do that nut up tighter later, but we're not fussed now. So there's our upper receiver built and ready to go on. And then what we'll do next is we'll install this onto the lower, which is a little bit fiddly because I have to pass the wires through this tiny little hole there. So it's possible I might do that. I might show you what I'm going to do and then do that off camera just to save time. Okie dokie. Okay, what we can do now is put the two halves together. Now, normally with the Socom, you can install the barrel, you can install the upper receiver on the lower receiver without installing any of this, because the barrel doesn't infringe that grub screw there, but obviously we can't do it that way around. So the way we've got to do it is take the lower and the barrel, and we have to pop the barrel assembly and hop assembly onto the loading nozzle, okay? And then these wires are going to sit kind of in that groove there as we pass it onto the upper receiver. So I'll give it a go. I'll see if I can do it. So don't forget your spring, that goes over the barrel, and then we are holding the recoil system with our finger. We are going to slide the barrel into the upper receiver, and then at this point we're going to make sure that the wires are lined up like so. Okay, going on okay at the moment. Now, as you can see, the wires have got to the end of their travel. So what I need to do is I need to pass them through the hole, and then I can slide the whole thing together. But I'll do that off camera because otherwise we'll be here all day because it's very, very fiddly. Okay, I've managed to thread the wires through and clip the upper receiver home. So that's now all the way back. On the TM Socoms, there's these little plastic pieces. Again, all of that you can learn on a build video by Eagle 6 Airsoft or Kingdom of Airsoft, anything like that. They show full descriptions and breakdowns of this gun, but obviously we're doing this to turn it into an L119 as opposed to an M4A1 Socom. So that's now secure, that's in. We can now take our pin and we can press that home. This is exactly the same as any standard AEG. Just make sure the flat is lined up with the front, and that's home. So that's our complete assembly, ready to go. So as you can see, it's all aligned and secure. Everything works. Check everything's moving, and then what we can do is we can install the RAS, the CAC RAS, and the silencer, and this is starting to look like what it's meant to be. Right, that brings us towards the end of this build video. So we've got our gun here, and we've got the various accessories that were fitted to the L119A1 surrounding it. So sort of in order, we've got our 10-inch outer barrel. So you can get a 10.5 outer barrel for the TM recoil. Obviously I use I think it's a 13 or 14-inch barrel that comes with the Socom, cut it down, rethread it to 10-inch, and that gives us the length we want. Obviously your inner barrel is going to be sticking out, so you can either change out the inner barrel or just permanently run a flash hider and suppressor on the end. We've got our stock with our Diemaco replica butt pad. We've got our Knight Simon N4 RAS replica rail system, and we've got our GMP Storm grip, which replicates the grip that's used by the Brits on the L119. We've got our lower receiver with the correct Diemaco Colt Canada trademarks on it, and as you can see here, the trades on the fire selector, instead of saying safe, semi and auto, it just says SR and auto on there. And we've also got here a Magpul ASAP sling mount replica as well, because that kind of completes the look. So all we have to do is pop these bits on. So I've got a couple of shims here which are going to shim the flash hider and enable the graphics on the Surefire Socom RC suppressor to be on the very top of the gun, which is where I want them. So I just simply have to pop the shims over. Obviously I just did the maths and worked out how far around the circle it needed to be, so I can do that up, and then basically the flash hider goes on the end of the barrel and the suppressor goes on the end of the flash hider. You then just nip it up like so, and as you can see, my graphics or decals or trades, whatever you want to call them, are on the very top of the gun, which gives it a nice symmetrical look. So all we have to do is pop on the RAS. Now these replicas, as I explained at the very beginning, they are very, very easy to come by, because obviously the Americans were using these as standard issue on their military M4s for years, I think decades. These come in various qualities. You can get TM ones, GMP, Inokatsu. Most airsoft manufacturers who make an M4 variant make a replica of this thing. You know, they're very easy to come by, and you just pick the quality you want. They vary in finish, they vary in machining quality, but these are quite nice. So all you have to do is, and again, the fitting options for them are fairly standard as well. So you just slot the end into the cup there, and pull back the delta ring, and basically that will, the little forked piece on the inside will sit inside the spider on the M4, on the Tokyo Marui M4. And then we just get the screw on the top and wind that in and do it up, and that sits in fairly snug there. Bottom clips in just the same. Push the front end in, pull the delta ring back, and that will snap in, and that's nice and firm. Okay. And then we go to the back of the gun. Again, fairly standard, much like the real steel. So you just pull that out, click it in. Obviously our battery is in the front on this one I've built, so the wires come through. You can get a kind of saddle pack LiPo, 7.4 volt LiPo in there. I think I use the 1000 milliamp hour variant, which gives me easily half a day's worth of skirmishing off one battery, so I just change it at lunchtime. And there we are. The gun is fully built. So what I'll do is I'll pop a magazine in, I'll zoom out, and I'll show you some extra accessories which really kind of finish off the look. You know, our scope, our IR designator that are used by the British forces at the time of this gun. Right, this is a nice zoomed out total view of the completed rifle. What I've done is I've put on the accessories that are most commonly found on the L119A1. Now again, there's no rules on this. There are many variants out there. Lots of different stocks have been used, lots of different scopes, lots of different suppressors. This could be considered a more modern variant because of the Socom RC suppressor. The original was fitted with the FA 556212 suppressor, which is just a few years earlier in its production. Some People have seen crane stocks. As the L119A1 came to the end of its run, we started to see Magpul CTR stocks on there as well. The main scopes used are the Trigicon ACOG, which is what I've got, the 4x32, but also the Aimpoint Comp series are used. I think the M4, the M2 and the T1 are all used on these. And then the last but not least, we have the IR designator. Now this is quite cool. Thanks to one of our forum moderators, he's actually reproduced the correct stickers for the British issue Insight Technology ANPEQ 15, which is what the Brits were using. Its designation is LA5, and it's manufactured by many airsoft guys. Nuprol do one, mine is Element, but to be honest they're all made in the same factory in China. As long as you get the IR model, you can't go too far wrong. The UHP version, or ultra high power, was not used, so if you see UHP embossed on the fire trigger there, it's not the correct one. But they work well. It's got torch, it's got visible laser, it's got IR pointer, and I think it's got an IR flashlight as well. You zoom in here, you can see the nice trademarks on the suppressor there. They were expertly done by Keith at Airsoft Machine Shop. He's actually got a CO2 laser on a rotary mandrel, so he can actually engrave those there on a curved surface, which is very cool. What we've also got is a common find on the L119. We've got the Trigicon RMR on there. Now, some earlier ones we used with the Doctor, Red Dot, which also had a winged protective mount on there. Later models were found with the RMR on it on its own. Again, replicas of these are found everywhere, easily sourced on Chinese websites, and as long as you get the right mounts and things like that, you can make a replica Trigicon ACOG with the RMR on there fairly easily. Element also do a nice replica of the Marui Tactical LT100 quick release mount for it. So you just undo the two bolts at the bottom of the scope, put the QR on, and then you can take it on and off as you please. The other option on there is the Magpul sling mount. So you combine that with the ASAP at the back, and you can put your 2-point or 3-point sling on there, and that's a good accessory. I believe many variants of these are used by the British forces, but this one is commonly seen on there. So yeah, there she is. Let me just lay it back down on this side. This is a great gun. The airsoft gun itself is fantastic, but this build is brilliant. It can be super short, even though you're only taking a little bit off the end of the barrel there. It's a really compact, easy to use rifle, which is great for woodland, CQB, room clearing, you name it. It's great. Yeah, hopefully this video has been fairly informative. In the future I'll show you my real steel variants on this. This is a basic setup, and probably the cheapest way that you can turn a standard airsoft rifle, in our case a Tokyo Marui Socom M4, into an L119. So if you have any questions, just write them in the box below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you're not already.